My name is Chloe, and I was exactly 28 years old on the morning I calmly drank my warm herbal tea and prepared to officially evict my toxic parents from a massive luxury summer vacation villa they absolutely did not know I entirely legally owned. This long, painful story really starts exactly 10 years before that specific morning on my 18th birthday with a large stack of empty cardboard boxes. My entire life, yeah, I was absolutely always the strong one. My younger sister was entirely always the fragile one who constantly needed their absolute full attention and massive extra physical space. I finally completely believed that sad truth on that exact birthday when they permanently kicked me out of my own bedroom to completely build her a dedicated private yoga studio. I slowly packed exactly one single small suitcase and I left my toxic home for good. The quiet actions I took on the morning of that birthday and the 10 long years I spent completely building this massive, successful real estate empire, entirely from absolute scratch, is the exact part absolutely none of them ever saw coming. Welcome back to Drama Storytime, where ordinary people set hard boundaries and quietly come out ahead. If a story exactly like this finds you tonight, you are exactly where you should be. Please drop a quick comment and subscribe so the very next beautiful story reaches you too. My current mornings start at exactly 5 in the dark, reviewing massive commercial property contracts and managing highly expensive luxury real estate developments. I currently own a massive, successful property development firm in the busy, modern city. I recently completely purchased a massive, beautiful plot of land entirely located directly in my old hometown and proudly built a highly exclusive luxury summer resort completely filled with private swimming pools and heavy security gates. Wealthy people constantly drive past the massive stone entrance and completely assume a massive, old corporation owns all of this beautiful, expensive property. I absolutely did not inherit absolutely anything. I entirely built this massive empire with 2 bare hands and a massive, fierce stubbornness that scared most wealthy investors completely off. I will eventually get to that beautiful, successful part because exactly 10 years ago, I had absolutely none of this massive success. I only had exactly one small, cheap suitcase and absolutely zero financial money in my empty pockets, and my mother's cold, toxic voice still loudly ringing in my tired ear. She gently said I was the strong one, exactly like it was a beautiful, rare gift. I used to foolishly think being the strong one meant being loved completely differently. And it took me many long, painful years to completely understand. It just meant being loved significantly less and being constantly expected to completely sacrifice absolutely everything I personally owned. Let me take you completely back to the busy hallway where I first officially learned that painful, dark lesson on the exact morning of my 18th birthday. Before I knew a single thing about massive property deeds or luxury estate management, or the massive difference between a toxic family and the loyal people who simply genuinely show up. I absolutely did not completely fall entirely apart when they closed that front wooden door. I entirely worked exactly 3 highly exhausting manual labor jobs completely at the exact same time. I washed dirty dishes and cleaned dirty public restrooms to completely, entirely support my own fragile self through exactly 4 long years of massive, expensive university studies. I completely threw myself entirely into the highly competitive real estate industry with the massive dark hunger of a desperate person who possesses absolutely zero safety net. I carefully learned exactly how to successfully negotiate massive commercial contracts and accurately assess heavy financial risks and entirely transform completely dead dirt into massive, pure gold. Exactly 10 long years completely passed by incredibly fast. At exactly 28 years old, I completely owned my absolute entirely own massive property development firm. I successfully rose to completely become a highly respected, massive name that made wealthy corporate investors entirely deeply bow their arrogant heads. One specific bright morning, I completely quietly purchased a massive, beautiful plot of green land situated directly next to a massive clear blue lake, completely located inside the exact same small hometown where I was previously entirely thrown out. I completely flattened the old broken ruins and proudly built a highly exclusive luxury summer resort completely designed for the massive ultra-wealthy. The beautiful, massive location entirely included fully detached private stone villas, completely equipped with massive private swimming pools and dedicated 24-hour butler service and incredibly strict private security gates. A few short months completely before the warm summer season officially began, I accidentally saw a highly dramatic post from my toxic mother completely on a massive social media platform. She loudly complained, using highly bitter words, that absolutely all her wealthy fake friends completely owned massive summer vacation homes, while her entirely own perfect family was completely forced to suffer the heavy hot city air. I quietly, completely decided to gently give them a massive silent test. I carefully worked completely through a massive, anonymous property management company entirely legally owned by me. I gently instructed my corporate representative to completely directly contact my toxic parents with a massive fake story. They were formally completely informed that a highly wealthy, anonymous foreign investor was currently desperately seeking a highly educated and perfectly clean family to completely safely watch over a brand new, massive luxury summer villa completely during the exactly 3 long summer months. The absolute only minor financial cost was an incredibly cheap monthly maintenance fee that was absolutely less than exactly 1/10 of the massive actual rental price. They absolutely, immediately, completely bit the massive shiny hook. They happily moved completely into my massive luxury resort, with the massive, arrogant pride of entirely foolish people who completely just won the massive financial lottery. I quietly, completely told my own tired soul that if they entirely genuinely showed massive gratitude and properly cared for the massive expensive property, I could possibly, completely, finally forgive the massive, dark, painful past. Massive, toxic greed, completely, sadly, absolutely never possesses a solid bottom. The massive luxury summer villa awaited their highly arrogant arrival with absolutely pristine marble floors and perfectly clean, expensive, imported furniture. The property manager carefully handed them the heavy brass keys on the very first afternoon of the hot summer season. The greedy family immediately walked straight through the massive front wooden doors, exactly like conquering royalty claiming a massive foreign castle. My toxic mother proudly marched directly into the massive master bedroom and loudly declared it was absolutely the exact beautiful space she entirely deserved after exactly one entire lifetime of massive, hard sacrifice. The fragile sister immediately claimed the second largest luxury suite and loudly demanded the busy cleaning staff completely unpack her numerous cheap suitcases. My weak father quietly followed them both around the massive, beautiful property and entirely agreed with absolutely every single arrogant thing they loudly said. The professional property manager quietly stood directly near the massive front door and carefully took highly detailed mental notes of their completely toxic behavior. During the absolute very first week, the highly dedicated resort manager sent me incredibly terrible daily reports detailing their massive, destructive behavior. They absolutely did not respectfully watch over the massive, expensive house, exactly the way they firmly, legally promised to quietly do. My toxic parents and the younger sister acted exactly like massive, cruel tyrants, entirely, without one single tiny ounce of basic human decency. They loudly demanded the busy cleaning staff completely rush over to serve them exactly 24 hours of the long hot day. They completely expected hot gourmet meals perfectly prepared at exactly 3 in the morning and entirely refused to pay exactly one single dollar in normal, polite gratuity. The hardworking staff members were completely disgusted by their massive toxic arrogance, but they perfectly followed my strict corporate orders to completely silently document absolutely every single broken rule. The greedy family proudly hosted incredibly loud, wild parties, stretching entirely late into the dark, humid night, completely ignoring the strict quiet hours of the luxury resort. They completely, carelessly invited exactly several dozen highly loud, obnoxious guests who entirely possessed absolutely zero basic respect for the massive, expensive luxury property. The drunken guests completely shattered exactly 3 highly expensive, handmade ceramic vases, entirely imported directly from a massive, famous artist in southern Italy. The fragile sister completely, carelessly spilled a massive, full glass of dark red wine, entirely, all over a highly expensive, hand-woven rug, completely ruining the beautiful, intricate fabric. They absolutely never offered exactly one single genuine apology for the massive, heavy, physical damage they entirely caused. They simply arrogantly told the tired cleaning staff to quickly, completely clean up their massive, disgusting mess, exactly like they were simply dealing with completely worthless dirt. The absolute most ridiculous dark toxic behavior completely, entirely happened directly on the massive digital internet. I completely quietly watched my toxic mother proudly post exactly several dozen bright digital pictures, completely posing directly beside the massive clear blue swimming pool. The arrogant woman completely typed a massive toxic digital status claiming this massive luxury estate was the beautiful grand result of exactly one entire lifetime of incredibly hard physical work. She loudly welcomed absolutely all her fake wealthy friends to completely visit their entirely own personal, beautiful summer villa. She completely posted pictures of the fragile sister doing useless yoga poses directly on the massive, expensive marble balcony and smoothly captioned it, claiming her beautiful, successful daughter finally possessed the perfect, peaceful sanctuary. They completely, entirely suffered from massive dark delusions and successfully, completely convinced their own toxic minds that they were the genuine wealthy owners of this massive, beautiful, expensive place. The massive delusion completely grew entirely out of strict control exactly 1 month into their free summer stay. The greedy family entirely stopped acting like lucky guests and completely started treating the highly dedicated resort staff exactly like their own personal slaves. The fragile sister completely decided the massive private swimming pool was entirely her own private domain and loudly demanded the resort security permanently block any other wealthy guests from even walking near the beautiful area. The weak father spent his entire days completely lounging in the expensive, imported furniture, entirely spilling dark coffee, and leaving massive greasy stains absolutely everywhere. My toxic mother completely spent exactly all of her free time loudly calling every single person she previously knew in the busy modern city just to completely brag about her massive fake wealth. I received exactly 3 massive incident reports every single day from the tired property manager completely detailing exactly how much massive damage they were entirely causing. I simply calmly approved the expensive repair bills and completely filed every single heavy document directly into a massive legal folder, waiting for the exact perfect moment to entirely strike. The absolute peak of their highly ridiculous behavior officially began exactly halfway through the hot summer month of July. I completely watched through the strict private security cameras as my toxic mother started heavily planning a massive, expensive summer gala. The arrogant woman completely ordered massive amounts of expensive gourmet food and highly expensive champagne directly on the resort tab, completely assuming the anonymous foreign investor would simply pay for absolutely everything. She entirely printed exactly 100 highly expensive gold-foiled invitations and proudly mailed them directly to absolutely every single fake high society friend she entirely possessed. The digital internet was completely flooded with her massive toxic bragging about the upcoming beautiful event. She loudly promised her fake guests a massive, beautiful surprise announcement, completely regarding the future legal ownership of the expensive luxury estate. The massive arrogance required to publicly promise to completely give away a massive, expensive property you absolutely do not own, completely deeply, amazed my tired soul. I completely knew this massive, arrogant party was the exact specific moment I had perfectly waited exactly 10 long years for. I quietly called my professional corporate attorney and completely instructed him to properly prepare the massive, heavy legal documents. We carefully printed the official lease termination notice and the strict legal eviction order and the massive official property deed, clearly showing my exact legal name as the absolute sole owner. I completely arranged for exactly 4 highly trained private security guards wearing crisp black suits to completely accompany me directly to the massive event. I entirely, absolutely did not feel any massive dark rage or loud, heavy anger as I completely picked out a highly sharp professional business suit to proudly wear. I simply entirely felt a massive, profound sense of total deep calm, exactly like the heavy, quiet air, right before a massive dark storm completely breaks the hot summer sky. I was entirely perfectly ready to completely shatter their massive fake reality directly in front of absolutely every single person they completely wanted to highly impress. The specific evening of the massive summer gala completely finally arrived with warm, humid air and bright, shining stars. The massive luxury resort was entirely completely lit up with exactly hundreds of bright, glowing lights reflecting directly off the massive, clear swimming pool. Exactly several dozen highly expensive luxury cars completely pulled up the long, smooth driveway and dropped off numerous fake wealthy guests wearing highly expensive designer clothing. The loud party music completely echoed entirely across the beautiful green lawns, while the hired catering staff rushed around carrying massive silver trays of expensive gourmet food. I sat completely perfectly still inside my dark luxury car, parked quietly exactly 1 block away from the massive stone gates. The professional attorney sat directly beside me, holding the thick, heavy leather folder containing their absolute, entire ruin. I completely patiently watched the digital security feed directly on my bright phone screen and quietly waited for the massive party to completely reach its absolute loudest peak before I entirely gracefully made my massive, true entrance. I signaled the professional driver to pull the luxury car up the sweeping gravel driveway. We parked exactly right in front of the massive double wooden doors. I stepped out into the humid night air, followed closely by my corporate attorney and exactly 4 highly trained private security guards. We walked confidently directly into the front hall of the luxury vacation villa. The party music was deafening, and the expensive room was entirely packed with exactly 100 fake wealthy guests wearing designer clothing. The greedy family completely transformed my peaceful property into a chaotic circus. I ignored the confused stares of the party guests as I walked directly toward the central marble staircase. My confident footsteps echoed perfectly in time with my calm, resting heart. I was composed and ready to execute the heavy trap I carefully built exactly for them over the past exactly 10 long years. My toxic mother was standing proudly exactly halfway up the marble staircase, holding a tall glass filled with expensive champagne. She tapped a small silver spoon directly against her crystal glass to demand absolute silence from the loud drinking crowd. The wealthy guests quickly stopped their talking and turned to look directly at the arrogant woman. She spoke with a fake sweet voice that made my stomach entirely turn. She thanked absolutely every single person for attending her elegant summer gala and celebrating her perfect, wealthy family. She then smoothly delivered the toxic, arrogant line I was patiently waiting to clearly hear. She proudly announced that her husband and her had officially decided to legally transfer this entire real estate property directly over to my fragile younger sister as a generous early wedding gift. A loud wave of fake polite applause completely erupted from the crowd of shallow party guests. The fragile younger sister smiled an arrogant smile and waved her soft hands exactly like a famous movie celebrity. The loud clapping rapidly died entirely down into a heavy, dead silence when my toxic mother finally looked down the wide steps and clearly saw me calmly, standing directly at the bottom of the stairs. Her fake, sweet smile instantly vanished permanently, replaced by a dark, ugly, furious scowl. She marched exactly 2 steps down the expensive marble stairs and fiercely demanded to strictly know exactly what I was doing inside her highly expensive private house. She furiously ordered her hired catering staff and my private security guards to immediately physically drag me entirely out into the dark, cold street. I absolutely did not flinch or step backward exactly 1 single millimeter when she loudly screamed her toxic orders. I calmly stood exactly perfectly still and gracefully accepted a small, clear glass of fresh, cold water from a confused passing waiter. I silently nodded my head directly toward my professional senior corporate attorney. The intelligent man wearing the crisp, tailored suit stepped confidently forward and smoothly opened his heavy brown leather briefcase. He quickly pulled out a thick stack of official legal documents and proudly walked directly up the lower marble stairs. He firmly placed the heavy legal papers directly onto a small decorative table exactly right in front of her angry, shaking hands. The warm room was completely dead silent now, and absolutely every single wealthy guest was tightly holding their breath entirely, waiting for the heavy truth to finally drop. The senior corporate attorney clearly announced to the quiet waiting crowd that this specific legal document was a formal binding notice of immediate rental lease termination. He firmly stated it was directly accompanied by a strict eviction order, legally effective within exactly 24 short hours from this exact specific current minute. My toxic mother let out a loud, bitter, mocking laugh, heavily echoing with pure, dark, blind arrogance. She angrily yelled that he absolutely lacked any actual real legal authority to kick her perfect, wealthy family directly out of their own beautiful summer house. She proudly boasted that the wealthy, anonymous foreign owner of this property deeply loved their perfect, little, loyal family and would legally punish him for this deep, personal insult. I peacefully placed my clear glass down onto a silver tray and looked straight deep into her cold, toxic, blind eyes. I calmly stated with perfect crystal clarity that I am the absolute, entirely true legal property owner of this expensive luxury estate, and I entirely do not harbor exactly 1 single drop of warm human love for absolutely anyone standing directly on those upper stairs. I calmly signaled my senior corporate attorney to turn over the final heavy page of the thick legal document. The official paper clearly displayed the legal land title, registered completely under my own exact legal name. A massive, bright corporate logo belonging to my highly successful real estate development firm was proudly printed directly on the top corner of the heavy paper. The large crowd of fake wealthy guests instantly started loudly whispering among themselves. My weak father stood entirely frozen in place, exactly like a heavy stone statue. He was completely unable to process the massive, heavy truth. My fragile younger sister dropped her expensive glass of dark red wine directly onto the imported hand-woven rug. The delicate crystal shattered into exactly 100 tiny pieces. She began to loudly cry and desperately complain that her beautiful summer was completely, entirely ruined. The arrogant face of my toxic mother rapidly shifted from a flush, dark red, completely to a sickly, pale white in exactly 1 single second. She slowly stumbled exactly 3 heavy steps backward. She was entirely unable to form exactly one coherent spoken sentence. Her massive fake reality was completely, entirely shattered directly in front of absolutely every single person she desperately wanted to highly impress. I absolutely did not scream or loudly raise my voice. I entirely utilized the exact same cold, steady tone that she previously used on me exactly 10 long years ago. I calmly stated that exactly 10 years ago, she proudly told me I was officially 18 years old. I reminded her she said it was finally time for me to become completely independent. I softly confirmed that she was absolutely correct. I told her I successfully became incredibly independently wealthy, entirely without exactly one single drop of their highly toxic help. I calmly instructed her that her greedy, toxic family now possessed exactly 24 short hours to completely pack up absolutely all their toxic garbage. I ordered them to entirely vacate my expensive private property. I smoothly added that any further physical damage caused to my massive luxury estate would be completely directly billed to them through my massive corporate legal team. I firmly stated that my exactly 4 highly trained private security guards would remain entirely standing inside the massive house. They were strictly ordered to carefully monitor absolutely every single movement until the toxic family physically departed the massive premises. The fake wealthy party guests completely realized the massive dramatic situation was entirely real. They quickly started rushing directly toward the massive front wooden doors. Absolutely nobody wanted to be entirely associated with a massive public humiliation and a strict legal eviction. They quietly slipped out into the warm, humid night air. They completely left my toxic family, entirely alone, with their massive, heavy shame. The loud party music completely stopped. A massive, heavy, dead silence echoed entirely across the massive, expensive room. My toxic mother finally found her weak voice and desperately tried to heavily plead with me She falsely claimed we were a loving biological family and I should completely, generously forgive their past minor mistakes. She desperately begged me to let them completely finish their beautiful summer vacation exactly like we were entirely best friends. I completely ignored her massive, fake tears. I entirely learned exactly 10 long years ago that her tears were absolutely never genuinely real. I simply turned my back directly on her massive fake performance. I completely calmly walked directly out of the massive front double doors. The cool night air felt incredibly perfectly clean against my tired face. I climbed completely back into my dark luxury car. I peacefully left them entirely trapped inside the massive, expensive cage they foolishly thought they completely owned. The private security team immediately locked the heavy front gates to ensure absolutely no wealthy guests could possibly return. My corporate attorney sat quietly beside me and gently nodded his head in deep, profound respect. We slowly drove completely away from the massive luxury resort, leaving the dark, heavy past permanently behind us. I looked directly out of the dark tinted window and completely felt a massive, crushing weight entirely lift directly off my tired shoulders. The long, painful chapter of my difficult childhood was finally completely closed and officially permanently sealed forever. The following morning arrived with bright golden sunlight. 24 hours passed since I walked out of the double doors. I sat peacefully inside my modern corporate office on the top floor of a glass skyscraper. I calmly sipped a warm cup of herbal tea while I opened the live private security camera feeds on my computer screen. The luxury vacation villa looked incredibly quiet. The loud party music was gone and the fake wealthy guests were a distant memory. I watched my toxic family desperately scrambling around the expensive house like terrified mice. They were forced to rapidly pack all their belongings under the strict watch of my private security team. The 4 tall security guards wearing crisp black suits stood perfectly still with their thick arms firmly crossed across their broad chests. They did not offer one single ounce of physical help. They simply followed my strict corporate orders to ensure the toxic family did not steal one single expensive item. The fragile younger sister was loudly crying fake tears while aggressively stuffing her cheap clothing into her plastic suitcases. She realized her fake dream of permanently living a wealthy lifestyle was entirely over. My toxic mother was frantically pacing back and forth across the imported marble floor. She desperately held her mobile phone directly to her ear, trying to loudly call her fake high society friends to beg for a temporary place to stay. Every single fake friend completely ignored her desperate phone calls. The wealthy people she desperately tried to impress the previous night wanted nothing to do with her massive public humiliation. My weak father was silently carrying the heavy bags directly out to their old dusty car parked on the wide gravel driveway. His tired shoulders were heavily slumped, and his weak spine was bent under the heavy weight of his total failure. He never once stood up for me 10 long years ago, and now he was paying the heavy price for his weak, silent compliance. The strict eviction deadline of 24 hours finally expired. The head of my private security team calmly pointed a heavy finger directly toward the open front gates. The toxic family slowly dragged their cheap suitcases directly across the wide green lawn, bathed in hot sunlight. They looked incredibly small and entirely pathetic as they quietly loaded their bags into the trunk of their old car. There were no more proud posts on the digital internet, and there were no more arrogant boasts about their fake wealth. They were returning directly back to their cramped, dark reality, carrying a heavy burden of total, absolute public shame. The old car engine loudly sputtered as my weak father slowly drove down the long, sweeping driveway. The heavy iron gates automatically closed tightly behind them with a loud, satisfying click. They were officially permanently banned from ever stepping one single foot directly onto my luxury property ever again. The absolute second their old car disappeared down the paved road, my dedicated property manager deployed 24 professional cleaning staff directly into the luxury house. I watched the busy workers rapidly remove every single physical trace of their toxic presence. The broken pieces of the ceramic vases were swept away. The imported hand-woven rug was carefully rolled up and sent out for expensive, deep cleaning. The wide windows were open to let the fresh, warm summer breeze blow directly through the empty rooms. The beautiful summer villa was completely cleansed of their dark, toxic energy. I peacefully turned off my computer screen and gently placed my warm teacup directly onto my solid wooden desk. Sharing the exact same biological blood only officially makes us basic legal relatives. Genuine mutual respect and profound deep honesty are the absolute only things that truly create a real loving family. I proudly built my own beautiful table, and I reserved the expensive wooden chairs strictly for the loyal people who genuinely cared about my tired soul. Thank you so much for quietly, peacefully listening to this entirely true, beautiful story. Please leave a warm, kind comment, and remember to click the subscribe button. I will proudly see all of you in the very next beautiful, quiet story. Exactly 3 months passed since the iron gates closed behind their dusty car. Summer transitioned into cool autumn. The resort operated smoothly, without one single trace of their toxic presence. I was busy managing my real estate empire from my glass office. I assumed my biological parents learned their painful lesson and gave up their fake delusions. I was entirely wrong because toxic arrogance never dies without fighting one final desperate battle. My attorney walked into my office on a Tuesday morning. He gently placed a white envelope onto my solid desk. He explained that my toxic mother hired a cheap local lawyer to file a ridiculous lawsuit against my successful property company. The desperate woman falsely claimed she was promised an ownership stake in the summer villa. She argued her emotional distress entitled her to exactly $2 million in compensation. She also attempted to smear my corporate reputation by posting toxic fake stories on several internet blogs. I absolutely did not feel one single drop of fear or anxiety. I simply smiled and shook my head at her foolishness. I calmly instructed my senior attorney to unleash the full power of our corporate legal department. My expensive legal team drafted a heavy response detailing her massive property damage and her unpaid luxury resort bills. They included 100 photographs showing the shattered ceramic vases and the ruined rug. They legally demanded full financial restitution for absolutely every single broken item she carelessly destroyed. The heavy legal response was delivered directly to her cramped house by a formal courier. The cheap lawyer she hired immediately dropped her fake case the second he read the thick file. He realized he was legally fighting a wealthy corporate empire with absolutely zero real evidence. The fragile sister tried to delete all the internet blog posts, but my technical team already saved every single word. My attorney sent them exactly one final strict legal warning. He firmly stated that if they ever spoke my exact name again, he would bankrupt their entire family through massive legal action. The loud silence that followed was incredibly, profoundly beautiful. The toxic family finally understood they could not manipulate me the way they did exactly 10 years ago. The strong woman they threw out was standing behind an unbreakable wall of wealth. They were permanently locked outside in the cold, dark reality they built exactly for themselves. I quietly placed the white envelope directly into the heavy metal shredder sitting next to my desk. The toxic past was officially destroyed forever. I decided to celebrate this beautiful final victory by hosting a warm dinner party directly at the summer villa. I absolutely did not invite exactly one single fake high society guest. I exclusively invited the loyal, hardworking people who genuinely showed up for me. My attorney attended the dinner with his quiet wife. The dedicated property manager and the resort cleaning staff were seated at the dining table as my honored guests. We shared warm stories and laughed incredibly loudly, directly under the bright crystal chandelier. The warm evening was entirely perfect in every single possible way. I sat quietly at the head of the long table and looked directly at the happy faces surrounding me. These honest people were my true, genuine chosen family. They stood directly beside me through heavy corporate battles and proudly celebrated my beautiful victories. I finally understood that an expensive luxury house is simply an empty, cold building made of heavy stone and clear glass. The only profound thing that turns an expensive house into a beautiful, warm home is the genuine love of the honest people you carefully choose to invite inside. Exactly 5 full years passed since that beautiful warm dinner party under the bright crystal chandelier. My corporate real estate empire continued to rapidly expand across the entire country. The luxury summer resort became the absolute most exclusive vacation destination for genuinely wealthy people. I officially opened exactly 3 brand new luxury locations in beautiful coastal cities. I spent my busy days successfully negotiating massive commercial contracts, and my quiet evenings peacefully walking directly beside the calm blue lake. The heavy dark memories of my painful childhood faded away exactly like morning fog burning off under a bright hot sun. I was surrounded by incredibly loyal people who genuinely respected my hard physical work. My senior corporate attorney eventually became a trusted senior partner inside my massive company. The dedicated property manager was successfully promoted to oversee all my luxury estates. We built a massive, beautiful corporate family based on mutual respect and absolute pure honesty. I absolutely never actively searched for any news regarding my toxic biological parents or the fragile younger sister. The busy modern city is incredibly massive, but bad news possesses a highly strange way of naturally traveling. A former business associate casually mentioned their current pathetic situation during a quiet corporate lunch. My toxic mother lost absolutely all her fake high society friends after her massive public humiliation. The wealthy people she desperately tried to highly impress blacklisted her from absolutely every single social event. The fragile younger sister failed to marry a wealthy husband because her terrible, arrogant personality drove absolutely everyone away. She was currently working a highly stressful minimum wage job and loudly complaining every single day about her highly difficult life. My weak father retired with absolutely zero financial savings because they wasted absolutely all their money trying to desperately maintain a massive fake wealthy lifestyle. I listened to this sad news while peacefully eating my expensive gourmet lunch. I absolutely did not feel exactly one single drop of dark joy or malicious happiness. I simply felt nothing at all. The absolute greatest permanent victory you can achieve over highly toxic people is total, complete indifference. They spent their whole lives desperately chasing fake luxury and loud public attention. They sacrificed their own hard-working daughter simply to blindly feed their massive toxic greed. Now, they were forced to permanently live inside the exact same cold, cramped reality they previously tried to force onto me. The massive heavy karma they entirely earned finally arrived to perfectly collect its heavy debt. I quietly paid the expensive restaurant bill and walked directly back to my bright modern office, completely leaving their sad, pathetic ghost behind me forever. The massive, sharp contrast between our current lives was incredibly profound. I carefully built a massive, beautiful reality based on hard physical work and absolute pure truth. They built a fragile paper house based on massive, toxic lies and blind, foolish arrogance. A strong, heavy wind eventually comes for absolutely every single paper house. The strong woman they previously threw directly out into the cold street was currently providing highly successful careers for exactly several hundred hardworking employees. I was directly responsible for massive, beautiful charity donations, supporting homeless teenagers who were previously abandoned by their own toxic parents. I specifically created a massive foundation dedicated to helping young people successfully build their own independent lives. I took the massive dark pain they previously gave me and transformed it directly into bright, beautiful light for absolutely everyone else. I drove my dark luxury car directly back to the beautiful summer villa exactly late that same Friday afternoon. The warm afternoon sun was shining perfectly across the massive, clear blue swimming pool. The expensive hand-woven rug was perfectly clean, and the beautiful ceramic vases were safely displayed. I walked quietly through the massive double wooden doors and felt a massive, deep sense of absolute pure peace. This beautiful, expensive house was absolutely no longer a massive, heavy trap for toxic, greedy people. It was entirely my own private, beautiful sanctuary. I poured myself a warm cup of sweet herbal tea and sat quietly on the wide marble balcony. I entirely owned absolutely everything my tired eyes could clearly see. I legally owned the massive green land and the heavy stone walls and the peaceful, quiet air. I perfectly owned my entire beautiful life free from massive toxic expectations. The final chapter of this long, painful story is absolutely not about angry revenge or massive dark hatred. It is entirely about the massive, beautiful peace that completely follows a perfectly clean, permanent break. I completely spent exactly 10 long years fiercely building a massive, heavy brick wall directly between my quiet, tired soul and their loud, toxic noise. The massive luxury vacation villa currently still stands perfectly beautiful directly beside the calm, clear, blue lake. The warm summer seasons are absolutely no longer filled with fake wealthy guests or loud, obnoxious parties. Every single hot summer, I proudly invite the dedicated young teenage students from my private charity foundation to completely enjoy the massive clear swimming pool and the bright, warm sun. I quietly sit on the wide marble balcony and carefully watch them happily laugh and safely swim. I completely, deeply know in those beautiful, quiet moments that I successfully, permanently broke the massive dark cycle of generational family cruelty forever. I took the absolute worst heavy pain of my dark childhood and entirely transformed it directly into massive bright hope for innocent young people who truly, genuinely deserve it. I absolutely never received exactly one single genuine apology from the toxic mother or the weak father or the fragile younger sister. I completely peacefully accepted that sad, heavy truth a very long time ago. Some heavily broken, toxic people will entirely always choose to permanently live completely inside a massive dark lie, rather than simply face their own ugly reflection inside a perfectly clear, bright mirror. They're officially permanently locked completely inside the tiny, cramped prison of their absolute own massive, arrogant greed. They completely lost the absolute only strong person who would have ever genuinely cared for them when they inevitably completely grew old and frail. I am entirely, permanently free to proudly walk completely across the massive, beautiful green world I completely built with my exact own two tired, calloused hands. I entirely sleep incredibly deeply every single night, completely unbothered by their massive, sad, pathetic ghosts. The small, cheap plastic suitcase I carefully carried exactly 10 long years ago is currently safely stored entirely inside the massive master bedroom closet of the luxury villa. I deliberately kept that cheap bag to completely, deeply remind my quiet soul of exactly where I officially, proudly started on that cold birthday morning. It is the absolute only physical object from my painful, difficult childhood I ever completely needed to heavily carry directly into my bright, successful future. Absolutely everything else was completely, entirely burned away by the massive, bright fire of my own hard physical work. I completely look at that small, cheap bag and I absolutely do not feel exactly one single drop of dark, heavy sadness. I entirely simply feel massive, profound gratitude for the brave 18-year-old girl who completely, successfully walked directly out of that toxic front door and absolutely never once foolishly looked backward. If you are currently sitting quietly inside your own dark room, completely feeling exactly like the entirely unloved strong one, please carefully listen to my calm, quiet voice right now. You absolutely currently possess the massive, profound, heavy strength to completely build your entirely own massive, beautiful table. You absolutely, entirely do not legally owe your beautiful, precious life to toxic, angry people who completely refuse to gently hand you a simple birthday cake. You can completely, entirely choose to simply pack your own small bag today and proudly walk directly out of their massive, dark, heavy shadow forever. The exact beautiful day you completely stop desperately begging for their fake toxic love is the exact specific beautiful day your massive actual real life officially permanently begins. Thank you so much for completely spending your highly valuable time quietly listening to my true personal story today. Please absolutely remember to completely prioritize your own quiet inner peace and proudly, securely set your massive, heavy protective boundaries. Kindly, gently leave a warm, beautiful comment and securely hit the bright subscribe button to completely join our beautiful, safe community. I will completely proudly see absolutely all of you in the very next beautiful, quiet story.